Państwu przedstawić profesora Armena Gaspariana, który jest, i teraz będzie taka wyliczanka, redaktorem naczelnym czasopisma Rheumatology International, impact faktorowego czasopisma w tej chwili no, bardzo prężnie się rozwijającego, które oczywiście podglądam. I też często korzystam z rad pana profesora. Następny etap to jest również, pan profesor jest ekspertem w bazie Scopus. To jest taka baza, która no, jest bardzo opiniotwórcza dla wszystkich możliwych ewaluacji czasopism, nie tylko w Polsce. Tak naprawdę przede wszystkim pokazuje, jak rozwija się czasopismo i to, co tu będzie jeszcze mowa, to już ja nie będę wyprzedzać faktów, w jaki sposób i gdzie się aplikuje i w jakiej bazie ma znaczenie, co jest tą rzeczywistą daną, a co jest wzięciem no, takich danych, bym powiedziała, wszystkie dane z internetu nie zawsze są prawdziwe, myślę, że o tym wiecie. To jest też nagrywane, więc będzie też potem na kanale, na Facebooku czasopisma, no bo teraz bez mediów społecznościowych nic nie istnieje, jak wiecie, nawet życie osobiste niektórych. A druga rzecz będzie też, mam nadzieję, że się uda i to dzięki koleżance Olenie Zimbie, która jest takim naszym, można powiedzieć, nadzorcą mediów społecznościowych w czasopiśmie Reumatologia, będzie też na kanale YouTube, który powstanie czasopisma. No i to właśnie wkraczamy w jakieś takie dziwne światy, które kiedyś się wydawały niemożliwe. Jak znacie agendę spotkania, jakie tematy będą? To się przyda wszystkim, tym, co chcą zacząć pisać, ci, co chcą prowadzić prace naukowe, ci, co chcą nie pisać, ale wiedzieć czasami, gdzie napisać, gdyby przyszła taka ochota. I nam wszystkim właściwie całe życie, bo to się bardzo zmienia i też mam nadzieję, że zobaczymy wszyscy, na co zwrócić uwagę, czego nie robić w pracach naukowych, a co jest źle postrzegane i co praktycznie nie do końca etyczne. Także ja oddaję głos panu profesorowi, a wszystko się też dzieje dlatego, że czasopismo polskie Reumatologia, które ma aspiracje do bycia czasopismem międzynarodowym, jest na płaszczyznach ponad 30 baz indeksacyjnych, działa 60 lat, ale oczywiście zmienia się bardzo też no, zgodnie z duchem czasu. Również indeksowane w tej chwili w Scopusie, w PubMedzie i w tej chwili w tym roku również oceniane w kierunku impact faktora. Mam nadzieję, że to się uda. To taki złoty gral, ale czy on jest tylko gralem, to możecie pomyśleć. Dobra praca obroni się i bez impact faktora i cytowania będą od tego niezależne. Także ja oddaję głos.
Okay, excellent. So, good morning, dear colleagues, friends. So today we are going to discuss some issues related to scholarly writing, and I hope that you will learn something, will use gained knowledge for writing your articles for Rheumatologia journal, Polish journal, and not only Polish journal. Also, you will target other top rheumatology journals, will increase your scientific rank by targeting good journals, by increasing number of citations, social media attention to your articles, and also planning to get academic degrees, scientific titles, PhD, Doctor of Science, etc., etc. So my first presentation today is about planning research. What type of studies we should plan, and do we need specific tools to do research, to write articles? Of course, in the era of digitization, we have to learn about digital tools, about searches through bibliographic databases, and I'm going to present some of these important points for research. So when you start your research, particularly PhD students, first of all, you should stick to your own department's scientific priorities or mainstream studies spanning several decades, several years. So starting new research is quite difficult, new topic. exploring new topic is quite difficult. This is why when you join new department, you should explore their priority research topics and choose something specific, something of interest to you. Often we need to start playing with PubMed to find out whether similar articles have been published before and to figure out what's new in your research, what innovative studies you should choose. Usually we perform PubMed studies, PubMed searches to find out similar articles, to explore which structured keywords related to your research. And I'll show you how to find the structured keywords, particularly medical subject headings keywords. It's also necessary to read educational materials related to research, study designs, what type of study designs you need, what type of didactic materials you need to read. Today, we'll go through research reporting standards, and equator network standards closely relate to our medical research. We need to know research reporting standards related to our studies. Often we need to realize why we are doing research, why we are studying something, why it's important to our department, to our city, country, university, and we should also figure out what's of global importance, why our articles should be of interest to global audience, global readers, global authors who will choose to cite our articles or comment on social media. Research involves different types of studies, different types of research designs. And for PhD students, we need a limited number of research studies. Usually, PhD students need to learn how to write narrative or systematic reviews, how to run online or offline surveys, then how to do information analytical study based on Ministry of Health data for clinical research fellows, and how to do small cohort study or small case series study, observational studies requiring adherence to equator network standard called STROM. When we start our research, we usually go to MESH vocabulary and to understand definition of our keywords of interest. Usually, PhD students should know 10, 20 structured keywords from MESH related to their studies. Here, I present an example of keyword related to this particular presentation, evidence-based medicine. We need to retrieve from bibliographic databases best available research studies. When we recall COVID-19 pandemic, we recall uncertainties at the beginning of the pandemic and almost absence of any scientific evidence. At the beginning of pandemic, we as researchers relied on opinion, expert opinion, on sporadic case studies and previous experience gained from previous pandemics, SARS pandemics. So evidence-based not always looks like traditional pyramid. Sometimes we deal with just bottom of evidence-based pyramid. You see two examples of pyramids. One of these example is traditional pyramid, when we have systematic reviews, clinical trials, large cohort studies, case control studies, observational studies, then case series, expert opinion. Usually this type of pyramid is available for research topics which have been explored for years. Whereas at the beginning of pandemic and when we deal with new research topics, we may have uncertainties with finding top evidence. So in that case, we may rely on expert opinion, we may rely on lower level of evidence, let's say case control studies, not always systematic reviews and not always randomized controlled trials. We should also try to understand how to distinguish quality research studies. Not always large systematic reviews or clinical trials are of high quality. If you realize that so-called top evidence lacks quality, you should rely on low level of evidence, but quality studies, quality case control studies, quality case series, or even individual case studies, expert opinion. So it depends. So this is why I always remind our PhD fellows that at the beginning of their studies, they should recall traditional evidence-based pyramid and should also realize that not always top-level evidence studies are of high quality. This study article on changing approaches to evidence-based pyramid was presented on altmetric.com. Again, PhD fellows should have some knowledge about processing social media attention. Here is an aggregate of social media attention, and we see here that this study on changing approaches to evidence-based pyramid, well cited on dimensions, well discussed on X or Twitter, more than 350 tweets, and altmetric attention score, aggregate score of this article is 270. And it includes not just Twitter, Facebook, news channels, but also blogs and other social media channels. So all this information is important, particularly at the beginning of promoting articles post-publication, because at the beginning, we do not have citations to articles. We may realize importance of articles by going to tweets, by finding out what's important in these tweets, positive remarks, positive emotions. Researchers who deal with evidence, they should know about several clinical evidence hubs. Particularly from Elsevier, we have clinical keys. Clinical key evidence is useful, particularly for clinicians, particularly for PhD studies, or PhD students who may need some basic knowledge about their topic of interest. They should also know that there is in parallel to clinical key, there is up-to-date. So those of you who treat patients, who deal with clinical stuff, you usually go to up-to-date to delve deep into clinical subjects. Now, another important tool for researchers is PICO, patients, intervention, comparator, outcome. PICO tool is essential for analyzing primary research. Any primary research starts, analyzing any primary research starts from understanding who were studied, patients, what type of intervention was used, what type of comparators, placebo, other drugs, and outcomes, clinical events, or myocardial infarction, cardiovascular death, or total death outcome. So this approach, this instrument is particularly important for clinical researchers who analyze studies for their narrative or systematic reviews. Now, PhD students, again, need to understand whether there are practice guidelines like EULAR practice guidelines for rheumatologists. Any PhD student working on rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, or other rheumatic disease should find relevant EULAR guideline and understand level of evidence presented in practice guidelines. Usually practice guidelines are well cited, and I know that Maria Mashlinska and other fellows from your Institute of Rheumatology are heavily involved in drafting practice guidelines, in collaborating with EULAR experts working on practice guidelines. It's again, practice guidelines are a sort of evidence for PhD studies, and when PhD students analyze evidence, they refer to practice guidelines, to top rheumatology journals, to top general medical journals like Lancet, like New England Journal of Medicine, and in their reference lists, top journals, top evidence positions at the beginning of their reference lists. We also may retrieve practice guidelines by PubMed searches. Here you see that technical tip how to retrieve practice guidelines, all practice guidelines. It's about the number approaching 30,000 practice guidelines on PubMed. And when we add second keyword or keyword related to disease, let's say rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, we may retrieve limited number of practice guidelines related to our field of interest. Again, for PhD students, it's the first step of working with their subject. PhD students, particularly those who are going to draft PhD dissertations, they should also take previous examples. And on ProQuest information aggregator, we have thousands of open access PhD dissertations useful for new or novice PhD fellows, novice authors who are going to write articles, then converting these articles into chapters of their presentations. So I hope that most of young fellows attending today's seminar will draft dissertations, but a few lucky of you will also get their PhD degrees by simply publishing articles for top journals like Annals of Rheumatic Diseases, like Lancet, like New England Journal of Medicine, so-called quartile one journal, top journals, and defending their dissertation work without PhD dissertations. But again, you should understand that PhD dissertation is a collection of articles published in good or indexed journals. Here is an example how to search via ProQuest information aggregator. Let's say in UK, in Western countries, Anglophone countries, ProQuest is an important hub for PhD students looking for related PhD dissertations. What's important in PhD studies? Some of our senior colleagues, seasoned authors, know about traditional dissertations, about where they put scientific importance, aims of dissertation, and also specific steps for writing PhD studies. But the most important point in PhD studies, in dissertation, is central hypothesis or central idea. So when your supervisor presents idea, that's the most important step of your work, central hypothesis. Central hypothesis or formulation of hypothesis is based on searches through PubMed, on retrieving similar studies or analogs of your topic and finding out what's new, what's perspective, and it's called central hypothesis. Usually in PhD studies, central hypothesis in PhD dissertations, it's the most important part of work. The next technically important step is choosing supervisor. You can choose Professor Maria Mashlinska or Dr. Olena Zimba, who have experience in supervising PhD studies. But usually we also rely on academic profile of experts when we decide whether to choose, when we decide to choose supervisors. Usually supervisors should have broad professional interests. They should be active in research, publishing good papers, indexed by PubMed or Medline, Scopus, having good profile on Publons or Web of Science Reviewer Recognition Service, part of Clarivate. You probably know that reviewer activities are tracked or presented on Publons, formerly called Publons, but now Publons integrated with Clarivate, and it's called Web of Science Review Recognition Service. So it's an important part of academic activities. If a supervisor not reviewing for good journals, for index journals, or for other good journals, it's not good for their academic profile. So if you decide to choose good reviewer, a good expert supervisor, find out whether your supervisor is active in reviewing. Reviewing for good journals is a sort of influence on academic area. So your supervisors actively reviewing for good journals may also help to understand what's new in your field of interest, what type of questions are asked during the peer review, and guide you how to avoid mistakes. Also, good experts are active on social media. Novice authors and PhD students usually go to X or Twitter, ResearchGate, and find their supervisors by contacting them directly. Your supervisor should be also day and night available for discussing hot topics, for discussing emerging issues, matters arising during PhD writing, and they also have some experience of publishing with quartile 1 and quartile 2 journals. In some countries, in UK, in US, supervisors usually have good academic profile, excellent profile on PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science, and they are also active on social media, and their X or Twitter profile is also quite impressive. They simply discuss matters arising, actively, openly discuss with scholarly community. Probably you know some influencers, social media influencers with thousands of followers. These type of supervisors are really precious assets for PhD students, because they may find out what's new, may help PhD students avoid common mistakes in research. Supervisors should be also aware of research and publication ethics standards. I am one of supervisors, along with Olena, along with Maria Mashlinska, and I learn more from so-called from Retraction Watch blog. You probably know that blog of retracted articles, where all retracted articles are discussed, and this type of discussion is important for learning from others' mistakes. So here is one of the examples of good researcher, let's say Indian supervisor, one of the editors of Indian Journal of Rheumatology, and I closely collaborate with Indian researchers, Indian supervisors, and you see how we evaluate profile of potential supervisors. We simply go to Scopus. It's one of the examples of choosing supervisors for PhD studies. We find out, we pay attention to annual publication activity of these supervisors, impressive publication activity year by year. We pay attention to so-called H index, Hirsch index 22, which means 22 articles have been published, and each of these publications is cited at least 22 times. And we also pay attention to keywords related to their research interests. And after that, we contact these potential supervisors, ask them to help to guide PhD students. Now, about this so-called PhD roadmap. Usually, dissertation or PhD research starts from single case reports in clinical studies. Young researchers observe something unusual, report that case study, and then generate central hypothesis for their PhD study. Then discuss and justify online survey. Online surveys for clinical researchers is an important step. Why? Because if there is lack of evidence, we may conduct online or offline survey among specialists and learn more from their experience. So this is why surveys are an essential step for PhD students, particularly in public health, in clinical research, in medical education, nursing. All these academic disciplines closely relate to clinical rheumatology or rheumatology research. Then we may also learn more about our subject by snapshot bibliometric analysis, Scopus Web of Science analysis. Bibliometric analysis usually run along with altmetric analysis. We rank articles based on their citations in descending order, and we also pay attention how well all these articles were discussed on social media, on Twitter. After realizing the importance of our research topic, we conduct narrative or systematic review, or so-called qualitative systematic review, using PICO tool, Patient Intervention Comparator and Outcome tool. Clinical researchers, public health specialists, public health PhD researchers may also need to analyze Ministry of Health data or statistical yearbooks to reveal trends in prevalence of certain diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, diseases of musculoskeletal system. This type of information analytical studies can be published with good journals, particularly if you find something unusual in clinical epidemiology, in prevalence of certain diseases, particularly in some geographic areas. After conducting all these studies, we may embark on retrospective analysis of medical notes. We go simply to clinical archive of hospitals, collect medical notes related to certain diseases or certain clinical conditions, let's say rheumatoid arthritis and cardiovascular risk factors, and retrospectively analyze these case notes or medical records. And this type of article may be also of interest to good journals. And after that, some PhD students run prospective studies on analytical prospective trials or longitudinal studies to find out whether treatments or non-pharmacological interventions result in something good or improves clinical condition of patients. Research ethics. All PhD studies who start their research should apply to their local research ethics committee, present their research protocols, present written informed consent specifically designed for their studies, and obtain ethics approval or ethics waiver. I understand that in some countries, particularly in Poland, it's quite difficult because of long waiting lists for researchers, and any amendment in research protocols requires approval by research ethics committees, and not all research ethics committees are available in close distance to PhD researchers. This is why applying to research ethics committees should be done in advance to avoid delays for ethics approval or waiver. Some research studies, like surveys, require ethics waiver, not approval, not full ethics review, because you deal with low risk or no risk for patients, no risk for surveys, and this type of online surveys require just formal approval waiver by research ethics committees. In any case, it's safe, it's good to ask research ethics committee to go through your research protocols and consider whether information risks are present, low risk, moderate risk, or high risk. Some surveys related to sensitive issues, psychological issues, refugee issues, sexual violence, domestic violence require full ethics review by research ethics committees. So some differences exist. Now, you all know about case written informed consent, not oral, written informed consent for case studies, for all clinical research works. And we should also teach our students about publication ethics. The best standard, the best document published by International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, and this document is updated annually. Recommendations by this editorial committee relate to predatory journal. There are some points about predatory journals, authorship, conflicts of interest, artificial intelligence, how to avoid problems when you use artificial intelligence for drafting your papers, for designing your studies. You should always acknowledge support of artificial intelligence. And latest updates of international recommendations by this Global Editorial Association contain points on ethical acknowledgement of AI support. In terms of publication ethics, we should know about not just authorship, conflicts of interest, ethical citations, all these points presented by International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. But we also need to know about plagiarism detection and prevention. The best available or handy tool is Grammarly. Grammarly helps novice researchers to check their manuscripts for plagiarism, copying, and avoid copying. Now, we always should think globally, act locally. And for that, we need to search through PubMed. Let's say Ukrainian researchers should find out whether there are studies, whether or not studies available on COVID-19 related to Ukraine. And for that, you simply go to PubMed. PubMed is frontline database or platform for searches. Most researchers also use Google Scholar. However, Google Scholar searches differ from country to country, and this is why I strongly recommend to stick to searches via PubMed, Scopus, and Web of Science and 𝐸𝐻, because retrievability is similar from country to country compared to Google Scholar. When you do research, and this research involves surveys, you should have access to SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, or other survey analyzing platforms. And of course, you also need to understand why you need to work with social media. Here is an example we'll discuss a bit later, an example of strategy to plan online survey and use social media. Hypothesis. So we discussed central hypothesis. Now I just would like to highlight some important points. When you formulate your central hypothesis, you should also realize what type of patients, what type of sample size you need, and why you are going to statistically analyze data to approve or disapprove or discard your hypothesis. There is certain some recommendations on drafting standalone scientific hypotheses. Researchers, PhD researchers should also may also publish standalone hypotheses, but they also need to know how to work with so-called null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis for their original research. Few points about bibliometric analysis. I understand that Scopus and Web of Science are subscription-based databases, and not all researchers have access to these databases. However, without access to Scopus and Web of Science, PhD researchers or professors cannot do quality research, because they need to understand whether their research topic is innovative, whether something is new in their topic, and for that they need bibliometric analysis. Here is an example, just briefly. We pay attention to citations in when we conduct snapshot bibliometric analysis. We pay attention to top authors publishing in this field, top universities involved in that research, and also journals mostly publishing in this field. Why we need to know about journals? Because sometimes it's necessary to simply go to one single journal and analyze research data by searching through just one top journal. Let's say Annals of Rheumatic Diseases, or if a researcher, PhD researcher doing research related to Polish rheumatology, he or she should go to PubMed profile of Rheumatology journal and find out whether there are some studies related to their field of interest. Here is an example of reactive arthritis research. One of our PhD fellows, Olena's fellows, worked for 3 years on this topic and published and defended PhD studies. And the most important point was historical point. PhD student had to know about historical perspective of research about reactive arthritis, history, who presented reactive arthritis in the for the first time in the history. So, and you see, let's say, in relation to reactive arthritis and local perspective, that researcher searched Polish publications, limited number, Chinese publications, United States publications related to reactive arthritis. And you see that geographic priorities differ in relation to certain topics. So that's why you need snapshot bibliometric analysis. When we do snapshot bibliometric analysis, we also run altmetric analysis to find out social media profile of individual articles. Historic, let's say this one is a didactic article on reactive arthritis. Again, useful for PhD students to understand clinical perspective. And for that, we also need not just article, but also altmetric profile of that article. All PhD students should work with top journals and should know that journals like Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, or Nature, Nobel laureates journal, Nature, contain top level of evidence. And if, as an evaluator, I evaluate PhD dissertation, pay attention to references. If number of references to these top journals, top evidence-based journals is low, it means that researcher or PhD students ignored tip of a top level of evidence. So more and more references to top level of journals increase quality and increase scientific base of PhD dissertations. Here is an example of searches, let's say for Ukrainian students, searches via Lancet individual journal to find out what this type of journal published in relation to Ukraine throughout history. So this, instead of Ukraine, you can use Poland, you can use other countries. It depends on geographic priorities of PhD studies. And of course, all researchers should have access to databases like Scopus, should frequently or use PubMed on a daily basis, should work with Cochrane Library, Central and Cochrane database of systematic reviews. And of course, they should also work, search via 𝐀𝐝𝐲, Directory of Open Access Journals. I am happy that Olena Zimba is one of the experts, Eastern European, Central and Eastern European experts of 𝐀𝐲, and her knowledge, her evaluation helps to increase visibility of Central and Eastern European medical journals on Directory of Open Access Journals. It's a sort of white list of open access journals like Rheumatology, like RMD Open, like Arthritis Research and Therapy. All these top rheumatology journals are indexed by Directory of Open Access Journals. PhD students who wish to target good journals, open access journals, should go to 𝐀𝐲 database and find out whether their target journal is covered by 𝐀𝐲 or not. If not covered, no need to submit anything to that journal, I mean open access journal. When we discuss any research topic, first of all, we should go to MESH keywords vocabulary, part of National Library of Medicine, and read definition. Here you see a definition of surveys and questionnaires. It's structured surveys and questionnaires. When you publish survey report, among specific keywords, you should mention surveys and questionnaires. It was introduced in 1973 and updated in 2016. It's an important point to find out whether it's new keyword or revised keyword. In the era of digitization, we rely more and more on online surveys. And PhD students, particularly in public health, nursing, medical education, clinical rheumatology, need to run surveys. Surveys are collections of data obtained from voluntary surveyees, voluntary responders. And Usually, information presented on SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, or other platforms for surveys processed and presented as survey report. Here is an example of snapshot bibliometric analysis of survey by using just one structured keyword, surveys and questionnaires. You see, the number is astronomically high, 242,000 and more surveys published and indexed with Scopus database. Some of these surveys were published in COVID-19 pandemic and were exceedingly cited, more than 6,000 times. So you see that within few months, few years, these survey report attracted numerous citations. When we continue analyzing bibliometrically survey reports, we see that most articles were published in the beginning of pandemic. Annual publication activity increased in 2020, 2021. Some countries actively publishing surveys were United States, UK, China, Germany, Western countries, but unfortunately, Central and Eastern European countries were not so active in publishing surveys. Probably because of some differences in perception of the importance of surveys. We always should adhere to Equator Network standards. Any journal publishing original research papers, systematic reviews, narrative reviews, should ask their authors to stick to these standards. There are some standards related to surveys, like cherries for online surveys, like this one, like recommendations published by Olena and her co-authors in the beginning of pandemic, with emphasis on survey social media. A cross standard integrated with Equator Network, Delphi analysis based checklist of essential points for reporting surveys. And a few months ago with Olena, I published recommendations on reporting online and offline surveys. And this checklist included 16 points, starting from title, how to formulate title, how to include keywords, what type of keywords, surveys and questionnaires, mesh keywords, how to deal with ethics approval or waiver, statistical analysis. In statistical analysis, PhD students should know how to run chi-squared test. Chi-squared test is important to compare percentages. In one cohort, you can divide the whole cohort into two parts and compare percentages from one cohort and percentages obtained from second cohort and compare. So chi-squared test is an important essential test along with descriptive statistics for surveys. How we define surveys? Of course, surveys are historically were important for social research. In clinical science, clinical medicine, we just realized importance of online and offline surveys, particularly after the COVID-19 pandemic. When we lack evidence in certain fields, we simply ask our colleagues worldwide, globally, to help us to share their knowledge, perceptions, and to have a sort of evidence. Online survey reports are a sort of evidence, cross-sectional, cross-sectional surveys, part of evidence-based pyramid. Surveys aim to analyze situation, so cross-sectional analysis. The same survey can be conducted in 1 year, 2 year time with quite different results. We may ask physicians, patients, public representatives to share their views, knowledge about on certain points. So aims of surveys depend on research topic, depend on situation. Let's say if we need to learn from our colleagues, specialists, how to treat COVID-19, new disease, we of course ask them to share their opinion by conducting surveys. We should also understand what does it mean, good survey. Usually good survey is conducted by an expert, not just PhD student, but supervisor with experience in running online or offline surveys. And any PhD student planning survey, online survey, should use SurveyMonkey, advanced platform for collecting information, for avoiding bias, avoiding unnecessary and multiple responses from the same subject. SurveyMonkey is the best fitted platform for objective analysis of surveys, opinion of surveys. Usually good surveys are short, questionnaires are well designed, and it's easy to respond to, let's say, 25 professional questions within 10-15 minutes. And of course, if you see that the number of your surveys is low, 20, 30, 40, and you need hundreds of responses, you usually send reminders each day, let's say once a week, once a month. But if you extend that period, it's not good, because cross-sectional analysis should be done in a limited period of time, in 1 week, 2 weeks. Particularly in COVID-19 pandemic, most surveys were published based on few-day analysis of opinion. So here is SurveyMonkey. It allows you to conduct research survey. If you have just 10 questions, it's free, but you need premium access to conduct surveys with more than 10 questions, 20, 30, 40 questions. An example of reporting graphics based on SurveyMonkey. You see different colors and you realize that it's easy to rely on graphics generated by SurveyMonkey. You can also, if you lack funding, let's say you lack access to SurveyMonkey, you may use Google Forms if you have access to Gmail. And almost the same graphics, again, visually attractive, easily understandable, different colors. You pay attention to red part, let's say percentage of scholars who plagiarize in this particular survey. And again, good quality of graphic. For surveys, you need ethics approval or waiver. When you design your questionnaire for surveys, you analyze previous similar surveys or related narrative reviews to put all essential points. Then you clearly formulate preamble or justification of your survey, cover all pertinent points in your survey. If some points missing, evaluators at the stage of pretesting may ask you to put additional points to have complete self-administered questionnaire. Layout of your questionnaire should be attractive. I mean, sentences should be concise, attractive. Respondents should simply pay attention to keywords and answer to questions intuitively without thinking too much. And of course, at the pretesting stage, you should ask 5 specialists with interest in that topic to help you revise preliminary version of your questionnaire. In your questionnaire, you should combine different types of questions. Let's say binary questions, yes, no, with Likert scale questions. 3, 5, and 7 scale Likert style questions. Usually, good questionnaire contains 5 sections, each with 5 easy points, easy questions. Sample size. How you calculate sample size? The best approach is to have convenience sampling. If you know that someone conducted research, survey, collected 100 responses, you should try to collect more, 150 empirically, 200. The more, the better. This approach helps, particularly if you analyze and you see that you received good statistical data, you may terminate your survey and report survey. So convenience sampling is the best approach, the easiest approach. But you may also combine convenience sampling with snowball sampling, when you disseminate your questionnaire on social media and ask your colleagues to disseminate among their circle of friends. It's called snowball sampling, to collect more and more responses. It's called convenience sampling, and snowball sampling is non-random sampling. The easiest and quickest way to work with online surveys. And of course, to run surveys, you need to know where your target population is populated on social media, on X, Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. If you conduct a survey, let's say in Turkey, then you should disseminate your online survey via Instagram. If you run and you target British respondents, most probably you will disseminate via X, Twitter, because Anglophone respondents, researchers, clinicians usually use Twitter, Anglophone respondents, or Facebook. The more social media channels are covered, the more chances of collecting hundreds of responses. So I hope that PhD students, particularly those who are going to target Rheumatology journal or top rheumatology journals like Annals of Rheumatic Diseases, Lancet Rheumatology, or RMD Open, EULAR journals, they will stick to today's presentation, today's recommendation. We shall continue discussing writing issues, and I'm going through our third presentation for today. It's about writing articles. The aim is to discuss briefly research reporting standards, examples of equator network standards, then to understand what does it mean, systematic approach to bibliographic searches through bibliographic databases like PubMed, like Medline, Scopus, Web of Science databases. Google Scholar is just search engine. We usually do not use Google searches when we write narrative reviews or systematic reviews. We use only global databases like Medline, Scopus for narrative reviews and systematic reviews. And of course, we should understand what does it mean, ethical authorship, ethical and relevant citations. And for that, we always remember about recommendations of International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. And few words about impact indicators coming from citations and social media attention. So social impact indicators relate to citations and social media attention. All specialists working for journals, research supervisors should know all these editorial associations. And as specialists interested in English writing, I follow updates on European Medical Writers Association. So I have strong ties with our linguists based in Tokyo, Japan, And some of our fellows are now working or visiting Tokyo Medical University department, and discussing writing issues. Non-Anglophone authors visiting specialists in linguistics. For me, all these associations are important. Let's say I joined World Association of Medical Editors in 2008 and advanced my editorial skills, editing skills, statistics skills, because experts from all over the world, editors, membering World Association of Medical Editors, they regularly discuss writing, statistics issues, public research and publication ethics issues on their platform, online forum. So if you work for journals, you have to be a member of at least one global editorial association. I know that in Ukraine, in Poland, there are also associations supporting research fellows and editors, local editorial associations. But for all of us, for global editorial audience, two important editorial associations regularly publish and update recommendations: Council of Science Editors and International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. Why this second association is quite important? Because they have 14 journal members, top general medical journals like Lancet, like Journal of Korean Medical Science, like BMJ, New England Journal of Medicine, and also two organizations, World Association of Medical Editors and National Library of Medicine. Now, International Committee of Medical Journal Editors tells us about ethical authorship based on 4 criteria. I'm not going to discuss this criteria now. You should know, you should go visit their website and go through all points of recommendation, updated recommendation. But you should also know about predatory journals, how to avoid these journals. Predatory journals are so-called open access journals, violating principles of publication ethics and also misleading authors, particularly novice authors. If you see a target journal, open access journal, not covered by DOAJ, it means that it's worthless submitting anything to that journal. Good journals, open access journals, covered by DOAJ, Director of Open Access Journals. In terms of statistics, you should remember, when you analyze your data, try to report not just p-values, but also 95% confidence intervals. Try to combine descriptive statistics with statistical tests covering confounding factors, regression analysis, logistical or linear regression analysis. So try to combine, never stick to just p-values. So it's based on recommendations of International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. And in terms of references, always try to retrieve your references from bibliographic searches. Cite mostly top medical journals. Top medical journals is something equal to top evidence. Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, or top the rheumatology journals publish clinical trials, publish evidence-based recommendations or practice guidelines, and these documents should be cited for writing reviews, writing original articles. Reviews are well cited compared to original research papers, and for professors, for those who are going to make significant impact in their field of interest, should publish reviews. The best reviews usually published with Lancet, seminar series of Lancet. New England Journal of Medicine also regularly publishes reviews, narrative reviews, written by eminent experts like Maria Mashlinska and others. Experts in their field of interest. Maria Mashlinska, Sjogren's syndrome. Ankylosing spondylitis, another expert. Rheumatoid arthritis, another expert with the research team actively publishing in that field and targeting Lancet, targeting New England Journal of Medicine. This type of reviews well cited because published by good journals and authored by eminent experts, with decades of experience in that field. There are different types of review articles. Usually, we as editors, journals editors, welcome narrative reviews, well read, well cited, but we also welcome qualitative systematic reviews. I am against quantitative systematic reviews generated by computers, submitted by Chinese authors who are mostly unaware how the methodology was built, how they calculated data and presented meta-analysis. So I always encourage my fellows, my audience, my seminar and webinar participants to write narrative reviews and qualitative systematic reviews, both based on systematic searches via Medline, Scopus, Web of Science, and 𝐸𝐞𝐻. Now, some authors generating hypotheses, medical ideas, may publish medical hypotheses, something innovative, something to start new series of clinical trials, new studies, cohort studies, prospective studies. For that, you need to formulate your hypothesis. Hypotheses are based on certain structure, like any article, like narrative reviews, like systematic reviews. They contain introduction, analysis of available literature, available evidence, formulation of hypothesis, how to test hypothesis, different study designs, and clinical and ethical implications of your hypothesis. Let's say treatment of COVID-19 with antiviral agents. It's at the beginning of pandemic, it was a hypothesis, but not all clinical trials, not all studies proved that hypothesis. So clinical significance of studies, antiviral agents in COVID-19 were not so important because of a number of reasons. So hypothesis should have clinical and ethical implications, and authors drafting scientific hypothesis should also put these points in their scientific hypothesis articles. Most studies in medicine, in clinical medicine, should stick to equator network standards. There are more than 600 research reporting standards, but the main standards like CONSORT, STROBE, CHERIS, CROSS, there is just top 10, or for experimental research, ARIVE standard. So number of mostly widely used standards is limited, 10, 15, though more than 600 registered. So you see now an example of equator network standard about how to report systematic reviews with and without quantitative analysis. So the most important point here is methodology, inclusion and exclusion criteria. What type of databases you search through. You should explain how you search through, let's say, Scopus. Keywords used, combination of these keywords, timelines of searches. For systematic reviews, you should report flowchart. Initially, you search through different databases, and from each database, you retrieve articles, and most of these articles overlap. So you exclude articles, duplicates. You exclude articles, irrelevant articles not related to aim of your systematic review. And at the end, you end up with homogeneous article study designs. Let's say prospective cohort studies, or if there are no prospective cohort studies, case series. So articles based on case series, and analyze these homogeneous study designs for systematic reviews. Again, you should remember about evidence-based pyramid. If you design systematic review, it's always the best strategy to focus on clinical trials, top level of evidence. If there are no clinical trials, you may choose to analyze cohort studies or other observational studies, case control studies. If there are no this type of studies, then case series, and some systematic reviews may also rely on individual case reports, clinical systematic reviews, relying on individual case reports. For systematic reviews, we always encourage to use PICO tool, patient introduction, intervention, comparator, and outcome. For narrative reviews, I always recommend adherence to my own standards, my own recommendations published in 2011, years ago, but still these recommendations are valid and useful till now because they encourage PhD students and other authors to have access to almost all databases, Medline, Scopus, Web of Science, 𝐸𝐻, and work with these databases for writing narrative reviews. Some authors may also rely on libraries. When you report search strategy in your narrative reviews, you should present databases. There is no need to discuss how you search through, let's say, Science Direct or Springer link or Wiley online library. No need to discuss these data libraries. You should discuss only databases. Some authors present searches, discuss searches through Scopus, and then also mention about Science Direct. These are two products by the same proprietor, Elsevier, but one, Scopus, is database, Science Direct is digital library or digital repository of Elsevier. So you all, as authors, you should understand difference between database and library. All systematic reviews, qualitative, quantitative, ideally should be registered with Prospero registry prospectively. First, you register your protocol of systematic research, systematic review, and then conduct systematic review. Now, about titles. Titles should be short, and we should move from all traditions, I mean, non-Anglophone authors, and focus, absorb more or adapt to digitization requirements. So we should include all essential keywords in titles. Titles should be concise, should be free of geographic references to countries, Poland, city, Krakow, Warsaw, to increase attractiveness of your articles for global audience. When you put geographic references, you decrease number of interested readers. An example of good review, you see just one common or buzz keyword, osteoarthritis. And this article, this Lancet review is well cited and well discussed on social media, particularly on Twitter. Here is an example of searches via PubMed platform. And I'm sure that many of experts publishing with Lancet can publish articles just with one platform, one database, whereas in many other journals, lower rank journals or with lower impact factor, common strategy is to search through at least two bibliographic databases, Medline via PubMed and Scopus. This way you will increase coverage of current literature or comprehensive. Your review, narrative review will be more comprehensive. An example of systematic review title. Again, all relevant keywords presented. Title is presented as an interrogative title with question mark, and it also includes study design, systematic review. When you publish narrative review, there is no need to put narrative review phrase in the title. Only for systematic reviews. Some systematic reviews can be also considered as original research papers or observational research because you cross-sectionally analyze available primary data, primary studies. Some systematic reviews, not all. So titles should be indicative of subject category, short, but at the same time informative, inclusive of all relevant keywords. And some of these keywords can be so-called buzzwords, common words, popular words like bone, like blood, and this type of keywords attract a lot of attention because searches of these words via PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science, common. Poor predictions to citations, of course, geographic references to cities, countries, geographic areas. When you structure your review, you should also structure properly your abstract. And abstract of narrative reviews should also include introduction, search strategy, few words about results, and conclusion. Also, we call these abstracts structured. Even for narrative reviews, structuring is important. When your journal is evaluated by Web of Science database for coverage by Web of Science, they pay attention to informativeness and structure of abstracts. Short abstracts, not informative abstracts of original papers and reviews, decrease indexability of journals. And of course, all our participants should know how to find relevant mesh keywords to put in titles, to put after abstracts, and to discuss all these keywords in the introduction. First step of writing any type of article, original research paper and narrative reviews. How to find mesh keywords is easy. If you search for articles indexed by Medline, you pay attention to adjacent mesh terms, and from analogs from similar articles, you collect one by one these keywords and then use these keywords for further searches to draft reviews, narrative reviews, and to work with systematic reviews. So here are essential databases for research studies, for PhD fellows. If your PhD fellows do not have access to Scopus, it's not good. So ensure that all your PhD students, novice researchers have access to subscription-based databases like Scopus and Web of Science. And you see, I presented here Science Direct, the same product, but it's not a database. It's just digital repository of journals published by Elsevier. Research fellows need to know about Central Cochrane database of clinical trials. Number is astronomically high, more than 2 million trials registered with indexed by Central database. For clinical researchers, it's an important hub for understanding whether clinical trials in their field of interest are covered by Cochrane Library. Another important database of Cochrane Library is Cochrane Database of Systematic Reviews. It's database, at the same time, it's a journal with impact factor covered by Medline and all other databases. You can easily search through this database via PubMed platform. Here is an example. Let's say systematic reviews related to primary health care. Number is not so high, so you can manually search and find out what's in these systematic reviews and select those systematic reviews closely related to rheumatology, to nursing, etc. There are also specialist databases for searches. Let's say nurses need to know about 𝐶NAHAL. We have Medline, embase, and 𝐶NAHAL. All these three databases are, along with Cochrane databases, are considered as evidence-based databases. When journal applications are evaluated by Medline experts, they pay attention to evidence, level of evidence, how articles like case reports, case studies represent evidence. In Scopus, Web of Science, not so important, but still, you should remember that if your journal is oriented towards evidence-based medicine, if it's covered by embase, 𝐶NAHAL, Cochrane databases like Central, chances of getting indexed by Clarivate Web of Science databases increase. So evidence is as essence of medical journals. Even if you publish case reports, some journals exclusively publish case reports, but still covered by Clarivate. So journals covering neurology, behavioral science, sexology, psychopathology, journals may apply to PsycInfo database and get indexed. It's another important database for neurology, neuroscience, behavioral science journals, PsycInfo. Quite selective, like Medline, and their requirements tough, comparable to Clarivate, comparable to Medline. For rheumatology specialists, rehabilitation specialists, some specialist databases also exist. But I am not sure whether these databases are popular among rehab physiotherapy specialists. We usually publish a lot of rehab papers, recommendations, reviews. Most of these articles retrieved via Scopus, via Medline, and other databases. Scopus, you probably know, is the largest database, and universities are ranked based on their productivity covered by Scopus. Scopus is an important, largest database for academic advances, academic ranking as well. So that's why I strongly encourage all of you to search through Scopus, to index your journal by Scopus, and try to increase citations to your journal visible on Scopus. Now, 𝐸𝐻. Why this platform is important? It's important because some of our experts' work contribute to 𝐸𝐻, and I also like very much selectiveness of 𝐸𝐻. It covers only ethical open access journals, gold, platinum, hybrid journals, but completely gold or platinum journals, not hybrid. So they cover only, 𝐸𝐻 covers only whitelisted open access journal. So if rheumatology journal covered by 𝐸𝐻, it means that it's ethical journal acceptable by global community. The same refers to all open access rheumatology journals. If rheumatology journal not covered by 𝐸𝐻, but claims to be open access, it means that there is something wrong with that journal. I'm not going to discuss the specific journals covered by other databases, but not covered by 𝐸𝐻. So for our fellows, particularly, I have experience with British Library. I visited British Library on numerous occasions, and I know that British Library, like Library of Congress, covers most print journals, have access. They have access to 𝐸𝐻. Via 𝐸𝐻, they cover numerous open access journals. So British library resources are quite important. And some British researchers, British authors rely on searches through British Library. Probably in Poland, situation is different. And if your journal is covered, rheumatology covered by Polish medical bibliography or Polish libraries, it's also good for local visibility. But of course, they have some specific problems. Coverage by British Library is different. They tend to be global, whereas Polish libraries, medical and non-medical, not so digitized, not so well digitized, not so popular among medical PhD students. So we should encourage them to do more, to work more, to digitize their contents, and cover more Central and Eastern European, not just Polish, but also other countries' journals. ProQuest, I discussed ProQuest, it's information aggregator. ProQuest hosts numerous bibliographic databases in sociology, specialist databases. It's also a hub of dissertations. So in UK, PhD students search through ProQuest to find similar dissertations. EBSCO it's another information aggregator helpful for PhD researchers. Now, when we structure reviews, we should avoid referring to unpublished research, unpublished papers, retracted papers. So if you as editor check references, pay attention whether retracted articles covered or not. Clarivate promotes their product called EndNote, and EndNote automatically detects retracted article and suggests, the platform itself suggests to author to replace retracted articles by relevant articles, updated articles with valid evidence. No need to cite Congress abstracts, even EULAR abstracts. It's better to cite full text papers than Congress abstracts, because Congress abstracts contain limited information, not full papers. So, and the same refers to dissertations. Dissertations are non-peer-reviewed works. So you should cite peer-reviewed works. Here are examples of unacceptable references. I'm not going to discuss this. Simply avoid retracted, avoid papers from predatory publishers, predatory journals, and limit references to YouTube. Avoid references to YouTube promotional articles. When you drafted your article, choose top journals like Lancet, like New England Journal of Medicine. Some of our fellows, after attending our seminars, webinars, targeted also Lancet, targeted New England Journal of Medicine, and were successful. Some, few, also targeted Nature and published some short notes about publication ethics. So it's good. Always try to target top medical journals. If you are going to increase your influence as a professor, as an expert in your field, publish more editorials with good journals like Annals of Rheumatic Diseases, Arthritis and Rheumatology, RMD Open, and again, you will increase your influence, attractiveness of your research for global audience. Novice researchers, novice PhD fellows publish case studies. Some of these case studies influence their field of interest, usually change recommendations by professional associations. Let's say 𝐸𝐸𝐶 story, single paper, single case reports change marketing of that COX-2 inhibitor. So stories like that are important, and it means that researchers should continue publishing case reports, and journals like local journals, like rheumatology journals, should also continue publishing interesting case studies, case reports, regardless of their citation perspectives. Even case reports should adhere to equator network standards called 𝐂𝐝, case report standard checklist. Some case-based reviews combine adherence to narrative reviews, to PRISMA standard and 𝐂𝐝 standard. Where to publish case reports? Good papers go to top journals of global importance. If case reports refer to certain diseases of limited importance or global importance, can be published with local journals, small or specialist journals. Going to original research papers, pay attention whether these original research papers stick to 𝐸𝐴𝐷 structure. Some papers from Eastern Europe, Ukraine, combine results and discussions. It's not good. It's old-fashioned style. Always ask your Eastern European fellows to have introduction, methods, results, discussion, and conclusion. 𝐸𝐴𝐷 structure. In the introduction, present or disclose main keywords. Briefly discuss historic perspective. In methods, if study relates to laboratory medicine, present timelines, when and which laboratory processed data. So details in this field, in this part of your article is important. Discuss briefly old tests, and if you used new tests, provide more details on new tests. And in terms of statistics, so it's historic slide, and I always ask my fellows, PhD fellows, and novice authors to always check for distribution of parameters via Kolmogorov-Smirnov or Shapiro-Wilk. It depends on sample size. So, and statistical package service like SPSS allows you to analyze distribution via both Kolmogorov-Smirnov and Shapiro-Wilk. And then after presenting descriptive statistics, you present other tests. If it's clinical study, clinical research, most of the time we should have regression tests. Logistic, yes, no, or linear regression tests to correct for confounding factors. Sample size calculation for surveys, not always necessary, but for most original research studies, you should pay attention to previous studies, find standard deviation from previous studies, and using this and many other formulas, calculate sample size for your own current study. Combine, when you report statistics, combine p-values with 95% confidence intervals. 95% confidence intervals tell us about sample size. If sample size is small, range will be too large, and the opposite. Experienced editors or statistical editors may spot irregularities or mistakes or small sample size, just looking at 95% confidence intervals. What's new in discussion and conclusion? Nothing new, simply you should always add limitations. In Eastern European countries, post-communist countries, tradition was to present everything rosy, in everything impressive, with and hiding or concealing limitations. Nowadays, it's good strategy to disclose limitations, like retrospective design, like small sample size. And in terms of footnotes, open data sharing. All researchers should keep their archive, Excel sheets, survey data for permanently, should archive and keep archive. And upon a reasonable request, they should provide full access to their primary data. So open data sharing is about your openness and availability. You should be available to share your primary data. And in terms of conclusion for this part of our seminar, authors should know about equator network standards and should adhere to ethical standards or ethical norms popularized, publicized by International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, by World Association of Medical Editors, Council of Science Editors, and probably also local editorial associations. Shall we continue going to social media? So citations is important. Citations are important. However, we also need social media metrics. Social media metrics and social media activities should be in line with recommendations of certain editorial associations. So, ethical behavior of researchers on social media channels like X, like Facebook, should be in line with these editorial organizations. Retraction Watch has its own blog and database. So it has database and blog, Retraction Watch. On blog, they discuss retracted articles, and on database, they have retracted articles searchable with explanation, details of retractions, why articles were retracted. So Retraction Watch is, in terms of social media, is an important blog. And when we publish articles, and we often publish articles on publication ethics and Retraction Watch, I am happy that they always discuss our articles in a good way, discuss to disseminate information. We published about retractions, about publication ethics, and when blogs discuss our articles, social media metrics increase enormously. You will see some based on some examples. When we discuss Committee on Publication Ethics guidelines, we should recall their core practices. They publicize 10 core points, or so-called commandments, COP commandments, on ethical behavior of authors, reviewers, and editors. So point number 10 is about post-publication discussion. Maria Mashlinska launched Twitter and Facebook channel of Rheumatology Journal to adhere to this point number 10 of COP, to have channel for this post-publication discussion of published articles. If you see something is wrong, you should notify social media editor, and not just negative but also positive points can be discussed. So audience, readers should have access to social media to discuss different aspects of published articles. This way, you increase ethical stance of a journal, you increase visibility and influence of journals. But there is also statement by DORA, Declaration on Research Assessment. Our journal editors, young scientists should know that in the era of digitization and availability of different platforms, databases, and social media channels, we always combine citation metrics with social media metrics or with expert evaluations. So we have basket of metrics, not just single, but a number of metrics to evaluate individual articles. And there is no need to use two-year impact factor to evaluate quality of individual articles. Let's say in Lancet, they can publish hydroxychloroquine article on related to COVID-19, rubbish article, which was retracted. So it was published by journal with astronomically high impact factor. However, that article was lacking veracity of data. So, and it was at the end, eventually it was retracted. So quality of that article cannot be evaluated based on two-year impact factor. So DORA is telling us that we should have basket of metrics to evaluate articles. And social media is precious assets for most journal, rheumatology journal editors. You see, phase X channel of Lancet Rheumatology, X channel of Nature Reviews Rheumatology. These channels, if you pay attention to number of tweets, number of followers, more than 13,000 followers of Nature Reviews Rheumatology, quite impressive because these journals attract global audience. Whereas smaller journals, specialist journals like Canadian Journal of Rheumatology with more than 6,000 followers, like Current Opinion in Rheumatology, roughly 900 followers. Smaller journals or Italian journals called Clinical and Experimental Rheumatology. Probably it's good journal, but number of followers not so impressive for this journal. I am proud of another good journal, Clinical Rheumatology, published by Springer Nature, good journal. And we've supported this journal for years because of close contacts with previous chief editor, Carlos Pineda, and previous team. And this journal, because of social media editor, increased number of followers to closer, now it's 6,000 and even more. And it's Journal of ILAR, International League of Associations for Rheumatology. EULAR, ACR, UPLAR, AFLAR. So this is why their journal attracts a lot of attention. Now, about the Rheumatology journal. Number of followers is more than 900 and more than 100 eye-catching professional tweets generated by social media editor. It's good for popularity, good for social media attention, and this journal adheres to COP commandments, core practices points, number 10 point particularly. So it's good to have this type of journal, and this journal also works with social media followers, more than 900. If we decide to run a survey, we can send our survey to this address on Twitter, on X, and disseminate via this journal. Journal may also help us to run survey, online survey, supported or related to activities of this journal. So 900 followers will pay attention to that survey and will disseminate information. You see some good examples. Here's just latest example with likes and retweet or reposts. For social media, and quantitative evaluation of social media channels. Reposts are important, not just likes, but reposts, particularly reposts with some comments, microblogging activities. If you see good article, always share good impressions, put some good points, why it's important. John Gosh, and I'll present you some influencers, they always discuss good articles. Probably you know these influencers, social media influencers. I like journal Academic Medicine because I lecture, because I follow advances in academic medicine, teaching activities, and I noticed that they encourage and ask their authors present not just email addresses or ORCID IDs. All of you have ORCID IDs, yeah? Okay. And you also have email addresses, but you also have X handles or Twitter handles. So this journal, Academic Medicine, one of the top journals in medical education, they ask their American authors to present Twitter handle. And now about influencers. I work with I work with all of these influencers. To me, they are influencers in Eastern Europe, let's say in Turkey, in Mexico, in Lebanon, in Morocco. These influencers help me as editor to disseminate information related to my activities, to my journal activities. And I'm sure you also have some influencers in Poland. So influencers have good, impressive profiles on social media. Number of followers is important. And number of tweets is also. Let's say this guy from Mexico with more than 4,000 followers, Abraham, posted more than 49,000 tweets. It's an impressive result. Influencers. Now, about associations. I am not sure about Polish association, but I am sure of influence of EULAR, ACR. Again, number of followers is impressive. You know that each year, more than 16,000 participants attend EULAR. And you see all these followers also follow X channel of EULAR. The same, almost the same with ACR. Number of followers of ACR channel much higher, double. Now, ARLAR, Arab League of Associations, number of followers smaller, much smaller for Italian Association of Rheumatology, but it's again local geographic specifics. Italians probably like other channels, not X, not Facebook. All social media attention is aggregated on altmetric.com. I like this social media attention platform and pay attention to altmetric attention scores of individual articles. It's my personal opinion, but there is also Plum Analytics integrated with Scopus, not so active with some specifics. I personally like the way altmetric presents or aggregates information about individual articles. Now, when it comes to social media attention, I always recall definition by MESH, medical subject headings. Social media channels are a way of democratic, liberal sharing information. Any user, online user, may share any information without any editing, any monitoring. But when it comes to ethics, online users should be very careful. Social media attention activities are now covered by numerous databases like Scopus. They aggregate present from Plum Analytics, and any information coming from online users may be presented along with individual articles. Social media is used by medical students, particularly Facebook. It was used during pandemic for lecturing, for other activities by rheumatologists. There was one study report published in 2017 by Annals of Rheumatic Diseases, and it suggested that rheumatologists, particularly ongoing research fellows, Immunet members, spend 6 hours per week in pre-pandemic era. Most of them, 90% of surveys, used Facebook because, again, young fellows like entertainment, they like to have fun, to use Facebook to stay in touch with their fellows, and this is why they used Facebook, not other channels. But gradually, more and more rheumatologists use Twitter, understand the importance of Twitter, and I'm sure if we, Elena and others, run another survey among Immunet members, they will find out another picture. Number of Twitter or X users will increase. We discussed these points related to social media for research groups many times. What's important now? Professional associations like Polish Rheumatology Association, Polish League of Patients should have their own presence on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram and other channels to increase visibility of their activities and to take part, to influence in their field of interest in rheumatology. So we always rely on examples of EULAR, Immunet, ACR. So these type of activities, ethical activities, exemplary and important. PubMed, individual journals have social media plugins. I'm sure that some of you pay attention to these plugins, click on plugins and disseminate information about individual articles, but not all of you. You should simply realize why it's so important. It's important because you can share information about your own articles by clicking on plugins. You may influence your field of interest. Twitter or X immediate effect is enormous. So it's called immediacy effect. If an article published and you click disseminate via Twitter or X, you immediately increase importance. Chances of citations to your articles of your colleagues will increase. Immediacy effect. And Altmetric.com will aggregate information about your activities. So there are some rules presented by Olena Zimba years ago, before pandemic, about ethical behavior and tactics to work on Twitter and other social media channels, particularly when you repost, share information, not just like, but retweet as well. Social media editors pay attention when target followers are active. Let's say for American audience, you should pay attention when Americans are active. And if you share information in specific hours of daytime, you may have feedback from American audience. If your audience is European, so you may use other daytime activities for tweeting, for reposting. So this type of details should be taken into account by social media editors. And I'm really proud that we managed to publish in 2020 an article on acceptable and unacceptable behavior on social media. Let's say unacceptable is when you share information about your patients without blinding, when you discuss details, mistakes of your colleagues. These type of activities on social media are unacceptable and moderators may block your accounts. Or when you disclose sensitive information, X-rays, ECG films, this type of activities, quite dangerous. So-called sensitive information sharing is unacceptable. So, and bullying, discussing in detail negative aspects of articles, also not desirable. For that, we have Retraction Watch blog, and their activities is enough. So you should keep balance between negative and positive sides of social media attention. In terms of altmetric attention score, they updated the algorithm, and you see that Twitter is still important, Twitter. But the numbers coming from news outlets, university channels, blogs like Retraction Watch increase altmetric attention score enormously. Twitter also influences altmetric attention scores because numbers are high. Even though the limited influence of Twitter or X on altmetric algorithm, still Twitter is important. Mendeley readers in some countries, in US, UK, PhD students use Mendeley individual library. It's reference manager and individual library. Their numbers do not influence altmetric.com. However, please pay attention how Mendeley users bookmark your articles, bookmark articles in your field of interest. And always remember that social media channels are part of global open access movement, because social media integrated with open channels, they work and support authors. They have influence like DOAJ, like PubMed Central, and other open access initiatives. You see here 𝐒𝐞𝐦𝐢𝐧𝐚𝐫, you see here Pablons, so peer review article, and social media is also part of global social media or global open access movement. In conclusions, I encourage all fellows to actively use social media for scholarly purposes and use their metrics for snapshot altmetric analysis by PhD students in particular. Our academic life relies on databases, and in the field of rheumatology, we have 55 rheumatology journals covered by Web of Science core collection databases. It includes Emerging Sources Citation Index. It includes Science Citation Index and Social Science Citation Index. Rheumatology journals covered by Emerging Sources Citation Index. Nowadays, they also have impact factor. However, that impact factor not covered by ranking quartiles. Quartiles of rheumatology journals by Clarivate include only 34 currently indexed rheumatology journals, not 55. So you probably work with Web of Science, with Clarivate, and follow dynamic of rheumatology journal. All 55 journals, potentially quality journals, ethical journals, but only 34 carefully selected by Clarivate experts, by Web of Science experts, to be included in rankings. Now, you see, I presented here quartile 2 rankings. So previous slide was about quartile 1 rankings, Nature Reviews Rheumatology, RMD Open, Arthritis and Rheumatology, Lancet Rheumatology, quartile 1 with impressive 2-year impact factors, 33 and 7, 27 and 4 annals of rheumatic diseases. Lancet Rheumatology, 25 and 4. So for rheumatology field, it's quite high. Many PhD fellows in rheumatology will target quartile 2 journals. You see this not available, it means that this journal, let's say ACR journal, ACR Open Rheumatology, covered by emerging sources citation index, but not yet covered by Science Citation Index expanded. And this is why not included in rankings. So we have good journals like, I'm not going to discuss all these journals, but these are quartile 2 journals with reasonably high impact factor, 4.9, 4.0, 3.9, and ongoing research fellows or fellows working in narrow fields in rheumatology may publish their articles with these journals. Whereas quartile 1 journals, Lancet Rheumatology, Nature Reviews Rheumatology, they publish mainly EULAR recommendations, top expert reviews, or articles of global importance. Whereas quartile 2 and lower ranked journals publish and more accessible, more available to rheumatology authors. Now, I presented here dynamics of Rheumatology International. You see that the number impact, 2-year impact factor increased, particularly in the past 4 years, 4 or 5 years. It's good. And it's presented here. We also pay attention to articles mostly contributing to progress of these journals. And all these articles, systematic reviews, COVID-19 articles, well cited, and this is why they contributed a lot to progress, to increase of 2-year impact factor. We also check information about rheumatology journals by going to another platform, 𝐶IMAGO Journal and Country Rank, which is based on Scopus data, Scopus journal data. And here we have information about countries. Why I presented information about countries? Just to draw your attention to activities of rheumatology experts from Poland. The number of publications quite high, but not as high compared to United States. It's ranked, Poland is ranked 22nd in the 22nd place with more than 2,000 rheumatology articles covered by Scopus. So the more you have published with Rheumatology journal from Poland or other Scopus index rheumatology journals, these metrics will increase, and Hirsch index of Polish rheumatology fellows will also increase. You see, profile of American specialists, their H index in rheumatology, 374, whereas Poland has just 101. When we discuss Scopus index journals, the number is more compared to Clarivate. In Clarivate, in Web of Science core collection databases, we had 55 journals. Here we have 67 journals, Scopus index journals. So good. Academic profile of universities, journals worldwide evaluated based on Scopus data. And we have more rheumatology journals covered by Scopus, 67. Not all of them are currently active. Let's say 𝐀𝐝𝐈 Rheumatologia, Hungarian journals, they ceased to exist because of a number of reasons, or Serbian journal. They also had journal covered by Scopus and discontinued or not covered, currently not covered by Scopus. The same Rheumatism journal by Croatian Rheumatology Society, currently not covered. It was covered by Medline, Scopus, but because of quality, because of citations, low citations, these journals were delisted. Lucky journals like Annals of Rheumatic Diseases, Rheumatology, they have quartile 1 profile. These quartiles in Scopus, in 𝐶IMAGO, different from quartiles of Clarivate. Here we talk about scientific prestige of citations, whereas in clarivate quartiles, we simply talk about two-year impact factor. Now, two-year impact quartile 2, we see that these journals in rheumatology, again, we may target our fellows focusing on writing in narrow topics, may target these journals and publish with these journals. Quartile 3 journals, still good journals, accessible to most PhD fellows in rheumatology, and there is room for improvement, let's say for Rheumatology journal, to increase number of citations and to increase citations from top journals. If you increase journals, citations coming from Annals, Lancet Rheumatology, you will increase ranking of your journal in this quartile ranking. You see, Rheumatology Bulgaria increased because of a number of reasons. I'm not going to discuss why they increased their quartile prestige, but it's possible. So you can do the same. And you may increase submissions from other journals. Now about dynamic of Rheumatology journal, Polish journal. So you see over the past few years in immunology and allergy, in rheumatology, this journal moved from quartile 4 to quartile 3. It's good dynamic and more is possible because, as I see, based on this 𝐒𝐈MAGO journal and country rank metrics, prestige of citations to your journal is increasing. It means that quality of articles and their influence also increases. Imagine manuscript submitted to Lancet Rheumatology. What they do? Journal editors pay attention to references. And when they see low rank or not so popular journal citations, they advise authors to replace these citations by citations from top journals. It's a bias, but it's a reality. So if your journal articles covered by Lancet Rheumatology, Nature Reviews Rheumatology, it's a great success for your journal, and you should do more and more. Now, in terms of site score metrics, you know how to calculate. It's more objective measure of journal quality because window of metrics is more in Clarivate 2 years, and here site score 4-year metric, 4-year window. So they cover articles published in last 4 years and all citations to all these journals in 4-year time. And you see that from year to year, site score of this journal is also increasing. It's good. It's an example for evaluation. What we can do, or your journal editors can do to increase site score metric. Why? It's important because many countries pay attention to percentile of site score. If you increase percentile of site score above 25, chances of having more submissions to your journal will increase. Many PhD fellows are obliged to publish in journals with percentile of site score more than 25. We should also pay attention who cites this journal, and all these authors who cite your journal articles, at least top 10, they should be encouraged to cite more ethically relevant articles to increase profile of your journal in Scopus. So ethical promotion, ethical activities on Scopus, on social media, all these tactics will increase citations to your journal. Also pay attention which sources contribute to site score. Rheumatology, it's logical that most citations will come, but number is just 18. It's okay, but it's in ethical limits. Clinical Rheumatology, other journals, they cite your journal. It's good. Pay attention to top 5, top 10 journals and increase visibility of your journals to authors mostly publishing with these journals. It may also increase your site score. Also, pay attention to top cited articles within the past 4 years, again, contributing to your site score. You see topics of these articles, try to publish more in these fields, in these topics, because you see that in reality, top cited articles in this field. Let's say our article, social media platform, was published in Rheumatology in 2021 and published 20 times. It's okay, good, and contributed somehow to site score. Other topics, pathophysiology of hyperuricemia, gout, hyperuricemia, these type of attractive topics contribute to site score. Publish more, attract more authors from countries interested in gout and related issues. When we evaluate journal profile on Scopus, again, I take this example, latest metrics, we pay attention to at least 10-year dynamic. And we see that within 10 years, this journal, particularly from 2017, number of citations to this journal increased drastically. It's good, and I'm sure that it's because of your editorial team, Rheumatology, because you publish more, you publish good articles, attractive articles, and number of citations increased to 863 in 2023, last year. So positive dynamics. Your journal is also covered by 𝐸𝐽. It's not related to metrics, citations, etc. It's related to ethical stance of your journal. And be very careful when you display metrics from your Ministry of Health, from Index Copernicus, etc., etc. Avoid all citation metrics coming from databases other than Scopus and Web of Science. And maintaining your indexing, 𝐸𝐽 indexing, is good sign. Not all journals, there are some journals in rheumatology delisted by 𝐸𝐽 because of violating their norms, ethical norms, publication ethics norms in rheumatology, though good journals, but they lost their indexing status by 𝐸𝐽. So 𝐸𝐽 is important quality criteria, ethical criteria for journal profile. We conducted survey years ago in the beginning of pandemic, and we realized that rheumatology, mostly rheumatology fellows were surveyed in India, in Ukraine, Turkey, Kazakhstan, and they mentioned that when they target rheumatology journals, they pay attention to PubMed archiving, PubMed central archiving, to metrics, site score values, to prestige, international prestige, to presence of journals not so popular, but still valuable, Twitter and Facebook in 2020. Manuscript turnaround times. If you rapidly process manuscripts, if your peer reviewers are active, you attract more authors who wish to publish quickly. PhD fellows particularly, they need to publish within 1 month, 2 months. So if you extend that time around period to 6 months, 1 year, chances of attracting more good articles low. And free of charge publication option in rheumatology, journals publishing free of charge attract a lot of attention. More than half of surveyed participants in our survey mentioned that free of charge status, platinum, or other options, good. So even if journal charges authors, they should have waiver policies for for authors from Ukraine, poor Ukrainian fellows, and others who lack funding, who face existential threats, etc. So these type of issues are important. I also published years ago about platforms and databases required for visibility. You see, if a journal is properly digitized, available on Google Scholar, because most clinicians still use Google Scholar for searches. Scopus is important. Web of Science was important. It was an article published in 2016. So Medline and PubMed central visibility is important for rheumatology journal. Number of databases, libraries, so continue working on your journal to increase visibility and coverage by national libraries, medical libraries, and you may increase visibility this way as well. Not just targeting global and specialist databases, but also collaborating with libraries. And of course, in terms of perspectives, almost 10 years ago, strategy was to improve open access strategy, to have advances in the field of open access, to archive more permanently, to increase quality of open access archive of your journal, to increase articles from PhD fellows, to interview and involve in your journal activities experts in your field. I mentioned it years ago, but still the same strategy, to work with colleagues like Ricard Cervero, lupus expert, other experts involved in good journals who may share their experience. You may interview them to increase attractiveness to your journal. So that there are different strategies to increase attractiveness, visibility, and quality of journal. And I should recall strategy. I was one of authors of Sarajevo Declaration on integrity and visibility of scholarly journals, again published in 2016, but still this strategy is important for all journals, not just rheumatology. Improve in-house editorial procedures, how you check submissions, particularly from non-Anglophone countries, from China, from countries where artificial intelligence is actively used in a not ethical way. Try to increase editorial credentials of your authors, of your editorial board members, editorial staff members. Discuss more regional or local issues, Central and Eastern European, Polish issues, not just American, not just British, and ethically promote articles on social media, articles free of any connections to pharmaceutical industry. We don't need promotion of biologics and other agents on social media, this type of issues, because patients also may see your strategy. So be very careful when you work with social media. Know who is involved in ethical promotion of articles. Specialists with editorial credentials. I always stress the importance of editorial credentials of members involved in rheumatology journals. Editorial credentials. By attending this type of surveys, seminars, webinars, editors may increase their credentials and then may contribute to Rheumatology journal. Some may even become members of Annals of Rheumatic Diseases, Lancet Rheumatology, and learn more from their strategy as well. So I hope today's seminar will be useful to our offline viewers, offline audience, and today active participants. I express my gratitude to all of you who stayed until the end of our seminar. I see that you have been interested in all these topics attentively followed over the past 3-4 hours. It's good. And I express my gratitude to Maria Mashlinska for organizing this type of meeting, to Institute of Rheumatology for hosting our seminar, supporting us this time. Hopefully, our seminars will be organized on regular basis, not just close to jubilees, anniversaries of journal, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, but on an annual basis. So thank you for arranging this unforgettable seminar. Thank you.